G'day everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm in the auspicious second to last slot on the last day, and I appreciate that all of you are still awake. So that's awesome. Hopefully you had some tea and coffee at the last break. As I said, my name's Tom, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of StartSomeGood.com. I'm not here to tell you about how crowdfunding works. You've had heaps of insight into that over the last 3 days, and you don't need me to break down how various campaigns work. I want to talk about a particular model of cross-sector partnership that we've been developing that we think can lead to a much more innovative and responsive social impact sector overall. But before I get to that, I just want to introduce myself a little bit, because I think my background and where I'm coming from is really important in terms of why we do what we do and the passion that we bring to that. So my real interest... What am I doing wrong? So off to an excellent start. Talk amongst yourselves. It's crazy weather we're having. So my real passion is how we bring people together to create the change that they need for their community. I'm passionate about democracy, but in a participatory sense. Not simply the act of voting, which I think is an administrative mechanism, and not really how you can judge the health of a democracy, in much the same way as the AGM is not at the heart of business activity. It's an administrative mechanism where we determine the administrators of our business for the next year. Elections are how we determine the administrators of our democracy for the next 3 or 4 years. What actually determines the health of a democracy is what we do every other day in between elections. What is the access that we have to create the changes that we need for our communities? In following that, I set up several, by the time I finished university, I'd founded 3 nonprofits, all focused around supporting young people to create change. And the third of those was an organisation called VibeWire, which is still around today, 15 years later. And I spent my 20s building VibeWire around the country and running a whole lot of different projects around journalism, creativity, and along the way opened the first co-working space in Australia. Am I going backwards? Yes, I'm so backwards. VibeWire, co-working space. One of the graduates for our space actually is Possible, who you met earlier, and we're really proud of all the success that they've had. And they're a perfect example of the kind of young entrepreneurs that the space was designed to support. I then went and worked for a couple of years with Ashoka. Are you guys familiar with Ashoka? They were the guys who invented the phrase social entrepreneur about 30 years ago. And I was there because they'd recently undergone a complete change in the way in which they understood change to happen. Their old goal was to be the world's leading association of social entrepreneurs. So it was an overtly heroic model of change. You find these very rare individuals, you network them together, you provide them with support, they will bring about the changes we need. But in working with those people, Ashoka realized that's not really what change looks like on the ground. That these people are not heroes on pedestals, they're largely facilitators of change. And what they do is they turn everyone around them into change makers as well. And they give ownership of the change to the community around them. And so Ashoka's mission is now building an everyone a changemaker world. And when I arrived in 2008, I was the first person to work focused on social media and digital communications. And the job I was given was to figure out how social technologies can bring about an everyone a changemaker world. And so I spent a couple of years thinking a great deal about that. And one of the things you realize when you think about that is that one of the impediments, I believe, to creating an everyone a changemaker world is the difficulties in starting new things, in bringing new ideas to the fore, particularly in the social sector. And it's very different from in the commercial sector that has kind of almost a hunger for risk. That if you're not risky enough, you can't get funding from traditional VCs. If you're not trying to take, if you're not trying to provide them with 100x, 1,000x returns, they're not even interested. But in the social sector, it's the opposite. They want people doing, small, measurable, proven approaches to change. Don't do anything too crazy or risky, and it helps if you have a track record. So who are these people that traditionally fund social innovation? Oh, sorry, I should mention, and then I started Start Some Good, which is the crowdfunding platform I run today. And so the thing that I think a lot about is how do we fund social innovation in our societies? And how can we do so in a way that actually promotes innovation and change making? And so the traditional funders of social innovation have been, of course, governments, institutions of various sorts, religious, universities, foundations, and high net worth individuals. And these people, many of them very generous and doing amazing work. But as a cohort, they don't necessarily share our values. They're often very far removed from the actual issues being worked on. And in aggregate, they're very conservative in their funding. And I don't just mean like conservative in the political sense, I just mean in the risk-averse sense. I saw a speaker at a different conference a couple of days ago that was talking about when President Obama set up the Social Innovation Council, and they called for applications of proven innovation. And of course, if it's proven, it's actually not innovation at all. It may be very worthwhile, it may be important, it may be, desperately require scaling up, and that's a good role for government. But innovation is stuff we don't know if it will work. And the social sector has been very bad at funding things that we don't know whether they will work or not. But it's only by supporting things that we don't know whether they'll work or not that we'll figure out new things that will work better than the things we're doing at the moment. And that's what the world desperately needs. And I actually think we have all the ideas we need. I think we have an abundance of great ideas. And we have an abundance of people who are very passionate and ready to commit themselves to making those ideas happen. But we haven't had a social funding sector prepared to meet them halfway. And so what I don't think we need necessarily is more money overall. In many ways, I think social funding is like food. There's plenty of it, but the reason that people go hungry is because it's badly distributed and often wasted. And so we've been trying to figure out how can we make this sector more responsive. And so Start Some Good was initially a reaction to that, an alternative to that. And I'm not claiming to be any kind of great visionary. It's simply that I saw it working for my friends who were artists, who were facing, in many ways, very similar challenges. That there were traditional gatekeepers, whether those were record labels or government arts funding bodies, many of the same sorts of players, rich people, foundations. And not everyone could get through those gatekeepers. So crowdfunding provided a pathway around those gatekeepers directly to the people who love your music, appreciate your art, and want to support you to make more of it. And so seeing that from my creative friends, I thought, well, I have all these other friends who are social entrepreneurs, and this is exactly what they need as well. And so in the early days, it was kind of a, sticking the middle finger up to the traditional social funding sector and saying this is much better. But we've realized that that's not really the case, that it's got to be an ecosystem. That it's not about one type of funding being better than the other, it's about providing the right kind of funding to the right project at the right stage so that we can try new things, we can prove new models, and then we can scale them up. And so we think a lot these days, did I just skip over a slide? Oh, missing, that is so weird. There was a picture of a bridge, just visualize it, bridge. How do we bridge the social impact sector? Sorry, ghost in the machine. How do we bridge the social impact sector better so that we can connect the people who genuinely want to support innovation, but are not set up necessarily to seek out or support or resource that grassroots innovation? How can we connect them to those most innovative social entrepreneurs in our midst who have genuinely new ideas to bring to the fore? And it's not surprising that many of those innovations are now on crowdfunding platforms. So whether that's the first digital mapping project in Kathmandu, or the first speech therapy program in Cambodia, the first social enterprise food truck in Myanmar, the first incubator for women social entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia, a market that will support asylum seekers in Melbourne to access food, quality food at affordable prices, an app that will help you find shareable food near you. If there's a tree on your street that has something that is ripe right now, rather than waiting for it to fall onto the ground, this app will help you find and share that. It's called Right Near Me, worth checking out. Or this awesome change maker, Jennifer Windrum, who founded SMAC, Sock Monkeys Against Cancer, in order to provide emotional support for those going through the cancer journey, as well as to raise funds for cancer research. These projects all had two things in common. First of all, they weren't supported by any of the traditional funding bodies, and so they had to find a new way. And in finding a new way, they were able to build a passionate community that felt connected and felt a shared sense of ownership over the change they were making. And in many respects, that's actually better than money. We get a lot of entrepreneurs coming to our site and raising funds and then telling us maybe a year later, they say, well, when I came to your site, I was just thinking about the money. I just needed $20,000 or whatever I needed, and that was my focus. It's a year later now, the money's gone, but what I still have is this incredible community of people who are supporting me and backing me, and that's what's in fact fueling me to go forward from here. So money raised on crowdfunding in many respects is better than money raised in the form of a check, because it means that you have that underpinning community who does share that sense of ownership. This is not, by the way, from a fundraiser. This is from someone who just donated to a project on our site and then felt moved to write to us and tell us that simply the opportunity to fund things in her community was transformational, because they no longer needed to rely on the government, a foundation, a high net worth individual to tell them what could happen and what couldn't happen. They could do it for themselves. That's great, but it obviously places a limit on how much can be raised. Depending on the specific community or the specific entrepreneur, there's clear kind of capacity limits to how much a particular community may be able to contribute. So the best facet of traditional funding is, of course, the money and the capacity that those organisations have to make bigger bets and to support things to scale and make a greater difference. The best thing about crowdfunding is not even necessarily the funding, although of course it's really, really crucial, but it's the community intelligence around where funds are needed. So what if we could bring these things together better? And we could use crowdfunding as a way of directing traditional sources of funding. And I was really excited to hear about some of the work that you're doing in Russia with Good Starter, which is a very similar model, and I think really a fantastic way to go forward. And so that's what we're doing. What? Where were you before? Anyway, here's my bridge. It's missing. Woo! That's what we're doing with a model that we call crowd match, which is about connecting those traditional forms of capital to the crowd. And what's exciting about that is it means that that funding can be more responsive to what the community needs. It's a more fun and impactful way of doing that because it delivers more funds to the things that are needed by responding to the community's co-investment, by challenging or giving the community an opportunity to determine with their dollars where that organisation's dollars should also go. So we've piloted this about 7 times in Australia so far with these organisations. We've done it with government, with corporates, and with foundations. We've done it nationally. We've done it hyper-locally. With the Inner North Community Foundation, we did it with 2 postcodes in Melbourne. So these very specific postcodes. We've done it for social enterprise. We've done it for traditional tax-deductible charities. What's great about this model is that it's completely adaptable to whatever the interests of the funding partner are. If they want to support projects initiated by high school students that increase sustainability, great. That's how we'll draw the barrier. That's the opportunity that we'll create. And those are the sorts of projects that we'll invite in to participate in this opportunity. We're just about to launch a new one with CEFA, which stands for Social Enterprise Finance Authority, which is a government-backed entity in Australia whose job is to provide debt financing to social enterprises. They had a particular challenge, which was interesting. Their slogan is innovative lending. Their challenge was they didn't do any innovative lending because they had a set of criteria that was very traditional, that they were given this set of criteria that essentially meant you needed a building, you needed some sort of capital asset before they'd lend you money. And how many brand new, just launching social enterprises have a capital asset to use as collateral against the loan? So what we're about to do in a world first with them is use crowdfunding as a qualifying instrument for debt investment. For a social enterprise, will be given the opportunity, someone who is kind of close to creditworthy but doesn't meet their criteria, probably because of the lack of this particular collateral, and they'll say, well, don't worry about that. If you can go out there and raise $50,000 from the community, we'll lend you $100,000. Because, of course, being able to raise those funds from the community shows probably more powerfully than any well-written grant application could that you're a social enterprise that has a chance to succeed. Because you're proving that through your actual entrepreneurial ability to get out there, pitch your project, tell your story, and rally other people around you to co-invest in that story. And so we're really excited about that. And it's a way in which crowdfunding can be used to do types of investment that are not currently allowed in Australia, at least on crowdfunding. We don't have broadly based. ASOB, of course, are brilliant and have figured out a way to do this. But in terms of broadly based equity crowdfunding, that's not yet available in Australia. There's not much online peer-to-peer debt-based financing either. But this is a way of using what we have got, which is a philanthropic and pre-sale platform, to qualify people for those other types of investments. So while they don't happen on our platform is the pathway or the stepping stone to being able to access that. And we're in discussions with a couple of VCs at the moment. We're hoping to launch an actual equity investment version of that CEFA partnership soon as well. What's great about this is that it's not just a $1 into 2 type of a match. The community tends to overmatch the funds raised. I'm sure as you've heard over and over again, those early supporters are so crucial with any kind of a crowdfunding campaign. Early momentum is almost the most important thing for crowdfunding. Momentum leads to more momentum, leads to success. And so we don't ask people, you raise 10,000 and then we'll give you 10,000. If their goal is 20, let's say, the corporate or the foundation or the government, the partner will give them the money first. So at the moment the campaign launches, it already has that contribution acknowledged within its thermometer, within its goals. So the moment that you and I see it, it's already on $10,000. When you see a project on $10,000 versus $0, you look at it very, very differently, don't you? It's instantly credible, it's interesting, something's going on here. They've already got $10,000 behind them. And so it creates that day one support that leads to the momentum that ends up being overmatched. Across those 7 projects so far, the match has been 3.5x on average. So that means it's a highly leveraged way of doing giving. For a small foundation with, let's say, $50,000 to invest in a particular social cause they care about, we can turn that into $150,000 to $200,000 delivered to that social cause. So it's a really effective way to see more activity, more action, more impact around the things that you care about as a funder. I want to tell you just a little bit more about one of our particular partners, which is ING Direct, and we run a program with them called Dream Starter. All these names are really fabulously similar with Good Starter, Dream Starter, Start Some Good. And so they launched a program with us 2 years ago with an initial kind of pilot with $30,000. Last year they invested about $80,000, and this year they'll put $100,000 through our platform. And they do that by selecting 2 groups of 10 projects at a time, and then they giving them a quarter to a half of what we call their tipping point, which is their all or nothing threshold, the point that they need to reach in order for funds to be transferred. And so last year, of those 20 campaigns, 18 of them ultimately reached their goals. A 90% success rate, much, much higher than the background rate within crowdfunding. I mean, our success rate is 52% overall. It's one of the best in the industry, in fact. Kickstarter's 40, Indiegogo's 9. But these guys, of course, as you'd expect, they get started that much further along the racetrack. They have a better chance of reaching the end. It's easier to run half a marathon than a marathon. What's more, they're able to raise almost $300,000, which is a 4x return in terms of social impact on the funds contributed. And excitingly, for ING Direct, the PR benefits were pronounced as well. They estimated at 21x the value of the funds that they invested. Because compared to traditional modes of grant giving, it's public by default. You know, traditionally when organizations give grants, they advertise those through a few email lists or particular websites that are only really read by people who do fundraising for nonprofits. Those people apply for grants, a few of them give it, and the corporation begs them to please acknowledge our support. But here, once again, they have to acknowledge the support in the process of raising the funds. Because crowdfunding is happening in public, they're explaining what the opportunity is, they're driving people to their page. In the process, they're also telling the world about the fact that ING Direct is making this sort of a commitment. So it's a genuine, and I know it's a cliche, but it's a genuine win-win-win for everyone involved. For the projects, they have a higher success rate than they could achieve on their own. They raise more money than they could raise on their own. For the funder, it means more money going into the things they care about. That's what they're there to do, is to fund social outcomes, plus more awareness and PR. And for us, of course, it's great projects that have a higher likelihood of success. So it gives more attention to everyone involved all the way around. Project, cause, funder, and platform. So we love it, and we think that's an epic win for everyone who's involved, and indeed for the whole society. And so with my final 2 minutes, I just want to quickly explain kind of where we fit into the landscape a little bit more. I know there's a lot of, and if you want to find out more about this model, you can check it out on our website. There's a lot of crowdfunding platforms out there, and a lot of them excellent, and we've met a lot of them today and over the last 3 days, which has been really, really fantastic. Both met them in the presentorial sense, but also had the opportunity to meet many of them in person, and that's been a real thrill. You all really inspire me. How we see ourselves as fitting in is that we are exclusively focused on social impact projects, but importantly, we take all types of social impact projects. So we're not exclusive to tax-deductible charities. We support for-profit social enterprises, and we support unincorporated groups of citizens who are coming together to raise some money to make something happen. We don't think you need to set up Citizens Inc. every time you want to make a difference for your community. We're international. We have a lot of fabulous peers who we work with who do similar sorts of work, but on a country-by-country level, but we're able to take great social stories and help amplify those internationally. And you'll find there are a lot of people in places like Australia and the US who are really excited to fund great projects in places like Southeast Asia that they're inspired by and that have a great story to tell. And we're founded by social entrepreneurs for social entrepreneurs. So we bring a lot of passion, but also a lot of knowledge around cause-based fundraising, which is similar but different from fundraising for creative causes or fundraising around products and gadgets. There are different approaches you have to take. It's a different type of storytelling. And the way in which we really live those values is by providing more higher touch support to the people using our site than other platforms. We're very collaborative. We work one-on-one with every single project setting up on our platform to help share with them everything we've learnt about cause fundraising, everything we've learned about crowdfunding to give them the greatest chance of success. And so, would you like to change the world together? Thank you. 17 seconds.
Great. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank
Richard,
you.
we can have some time to really open the question, but I'm sure.
Yeah, I saved 17 seconds for questions, guys, if anyone has any.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming. Here's a little gift for us. So.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.